think how you make it really valuable and interesting to people is you talk about the psychological contract, right? That's going to exist between you and your direct reports. So what is it that you're going to basically put them in charge of? It's not that you're necessarily in charge of other people's happiness, right? Or even their engagement, but you are investing in their career success in a personal way.
Yeah.
That feels like having an impact on somebody's life. That's something that most people's values can align with. So being the person that's going to help them grow, protect their interests, create conditions where they can do their best work. Those are things that most people can go, yeah, I guess I can see myself getting into. You wouldn't be like, that sounds awful.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So I think, and it will lead to things like happiness and engagement, right? But it'll just be a byproduct of this other thing that you're doing. And it's the best thing that you can do for somebody in the workplace, right? It's personal, but it's not like personal in a way that any other relationship in life is. And that's why when we say managers are the reasons people leave organizations, well, it's because it's unlike any other relationship you're going to have in your life.
Welcome to Manager, a podcast about the experiences of people leaders and how we can enable them to lead engaged, healthy, and high-performing teams. I'm Kamaria Scott, your host, and I'm thrilled to have you join us as we learn, lead, and succeed together.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Manager podcast. This episode is a little bit different in that we are doing essentially a part 2 of an episode that today's guest and I recorded on his podcast, People Managing People. And we're going to pick up the conversation here on this episode of Manager to Manager. So first, let me start by introducing today's guest. I met this guest at a wonderful conference called Running Remote, and we hit it off immediately because we both had podcasts that were aimed at people leaders and also had a real passion for helping people leaders to be successful. And so first, let me just start off by saying welcome to David Rice.
Hey, welcome. Or thank you. I almost said welcome to you. I don't know why. I'm so used to being on the host side that I forgot.
I know, I do that the same thing all the time. So David and I, as I mentioned, we started on his podcast talking about the employee value proposition and how the idea of work has changed over the years. So if you are starting this one, again, I'm going to encourage you to go back and listen to that particular podcast and then come back over here where we're going to talk about the downstream effect of what it's like to manage in the world of work where the value proposition is quickly changing. So this isn't necessarily an interview like you'll normally hear. It's more of a casual conversation between David and myself, but we do hope as people leaders, it will give you something to think about as you continue to lead your team. David, let's get started.
Let's do it.
All right.
We're going to have a chat. We'll try to keep it under 2 hours.
Because we struggled with that. So I think one of the things that we talked about in the previous episode was really the shift in the employee value proposition. And I just wanted to start there because I know that I had some thoughts about it. But as you think about what work is for people, what do you think is the main point of the employee value proposition today? What are we offering people in terms of work?
It's a good question at this point because it's no longer stability. Benefits are constantly getting slashed, right? Yeah, what is it? It's really what it needs to become, what it has to become, because this is just a natural evolution, I think, of the workforce anyways, like where we're headed with everything that's going on with technology. And I think the way that organizations want to do business is it really has to be development. That's like you constantly evolving your career and helping you open the next door or see what the next door is and where it's located. At least that, because right now I look at what's going on in a lot of, especially tech workplaces, and it doesn't feel like anyone's investing in people, especially when you're as part of the org or whatever. People aren't getting that sensation that they're being invested in. And if you ask me what is the value of being an employee, it's, I guess I don't have the simpler tax paperwork. That's about
I
you
love
know.
that. Simpler tech. So that's true. Now that I've crossed over to the entrepreneur side, I will say I do miss the simplicity of my tax forms when I was an employee. And that's so interesting because I was reading a book the other day and it said that work is our contribution and it's our exchange of a skill set and our knowledge to the greater society in exchange for the resources that we need to take care of our families. And I agree. And I think the broader sense of that for me is both today and tomorrow, right? Meaning like the value I got out of many years of being an employee was exactly what you said. It was the expertise that now allows me to figure out how to tackle the world on my own without a company behind me.
You see this especially in HR, right? Like a lot of HR pros, as they get into their like mid 40s or 50s, they end up going, you know what? I think consultancy is the way, or like I'm going to start my own thing, or I'm going to do fractional work. It doesn't end up being a thing where you end up working for somebody forever. At least that's the sense that I get from a lot of the older folks. I keep seeing that the story from last year, and it resurfaced again this week about how like HR people are miserable right now.
Yeah. They're going, I would say HR is going through a thing right now. They really are.
It is. I've been hearing about incredible levels of burnout for more than a year. And I just think, yeah, it makes sense that you end up going and doing your own thing because who wants to deal with that forever? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you just can't do it as a person. Either I completely shift directions and give up on this, which nobody really wants to do most of the time. It's a radical move. It's one of those things like I put all my time into this, I put all these eggs in this basket. Am I really willing to start over from square one, or do I take this and try to figure out something new with it?
Yeah.
And I've been there myself, and it's a really hard thing to just start over and go do something that you don't know how to do. And so it makes sense that a lot of people are just like, let me try to get into this other aspect of this.
Yeah.
Maybe I can get a couple of clients and they'll just pay my bills.
So what's really interesting to me is not even the HR people. We're seeing like younger people,
Oh,
a lot of Gen Z is just I'm gonna start off from an entrepreneur perspective. I'm not even gonna go into corporate America. Or they're in there very quickly and they come right back out. And I think that technology is giving us a way to do that, to monetize on our skill sets, where the barrier to that was so high before that it's so much lower now. I think about all the tools that you can use to, with us, right? Create your own podcast, market it, platforms like LinkedIn, you can literally be your own marketing department out to
yeah.
find people if you can get on stages. So I do think that people are trying to figure out how to monetize their skill sets on their own. But I also think that's why managers are so important to those people who are going to work, because I think that they are part of the reason that people stay with their employers and they look past some of the dysfunction of work because they have an immediate work team that they appreciate so much that they're like, I will stay here and do this a little bit longer. So I think that kind of leads me to the first point I wanted us to discuss, which is in the decline of the larger employee value proposition, are we asking managers to patch the holes in what people are no longer getting structurally from the organization and to be the differentiator in the employee experience? Are we basically asking each manager to create a new value proposition?
This is absolutely what we're doing. It's reached the point that I think it's like a crisis because you're setting people up to be ineffective. And then you've got all these companies now that are laying off all these managers. And they're like, we're going to eliminate this layer. Well, it's a layer that was needed at one point, you never supported and didn't care about. And then now you're just like, we don't need it. Now,
Yeah.
systematically, we've been stripped away the traditional employee value proposition, right? No longer security. Benefits are getting cut all the time. Advancement opportunities aren't clear to people. And then they've given managers essentially duct tape and they're like, make it work.
Yeah. Make it work.
And like the math on that, it's rough. Like the structural supports that once held the employment relationship together, they were the middle managers,
Yeah.
but they're drowning in one-on-one meetings. They're trying to personally motivate each team member. That's not sustainable. So it's not, we'll take care of you. It's like you're responsible for your own experience.
But isn't that, yeah, I think that's a really good point. You are responsible for your own experience. And I think what's really hard for managers is that people also expect a personalized experience now.
Then the gap between that, the manager becomes like the shock absorber for essentially like how that doesn't line up.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like the expectations, like fairness to Gen Z, what we all talk about all the time, like they don't trust these organizations,
Nor should I.
and nor should they, and they don't feel aligned with their values. mostly because most of the values are BS anyways. Right?
Yeah.
So I don't blame them. And now, like, they've got that freelance mentality of, yeah, I can plug together ways to make a living. And if I freelance it and I have to live on a shoestring budget, hey, I'm only 25 anyways. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Good on them for doing that because I've got organizations that come to us all the time. Or one of the questions that we get is, how do we connect them? How do we get trust? All this other stuff. And I'm like, at some point, some of this has to not be BS. I don't know what you want me to
I mean,
say.
the number one way to earn trust is to be trustworthy. That's
Exactly.
literally the way. And I think I remember, so I am a Gen Xer, but I tell people that I'm like borderline millennial. I'm the original job hopper. It was a joke amongst my friends how many email addresses I had. But I think for me, one of the defining organizational moments of my childhood was Enron. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
how all of those people lost their retirements, their pensions, like they just literally got nothing from the organization. And I think there's a generation of people who grew up who saw that and was like, oh, okay, so this is the relationship that we have with work. But also
I
saw
mean,
people work their entire careers to get nothing at the end. And I think that absolutely colored the relationship that I had growing up, which was basically, I'd like my money today. I don't want it for later. I want it now because tomorrow might not come, or I can't trust that you're going to do the right thing by me later. And there are lots of examples of organizations that have made decisions that on the surface do not look like, they don't make it look like they are trustworthy and that you should be trusting people, trusting them with your career and your future and your livelihood.
yeah. I think there's a couple of issues here too. Like we have, so the organizations are untrustworthy. And then you got, okay, so not everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur, right?
No,
Not everybody's cut out for it. It's not the easiest lifestyle.
it,
If you've ever tried it,
tell me about it.
it's very stressful. It's demanding and not, I think a lot of Gen Z naturally maybe doesn't want to do it. I think a lot of any demographic doesn't actually want to do it. And so the people that are then left in this situation where all these contracts have been broken, this manager's trying to hold it together. The manager is, especially, okay, so we got a generation here that, like you said, they saw what happened with Enron. They saw, but it's not just business, it's everything, right? Like politics, nothing has ever been what it's promised. They watched their parents and their older siblings go through the 2008 collapse, but then also watch the banks be allowed to do the exact same thing again. So like you can't blame them for being skeptical, but then they're in this organization now they don't trust them, and the manager is just doing this like emotional triage thing where it's because they don't know the answer either.
Yeah.
Half of them aren't plugged in enough to be able to provide the value, the training, the insights that they need to be able to provide. And then it's one of the things I've seen is when you have like patchworks of managers, like in an organization where they get together and they try to figure it out together.
Yeah.
And then like this is great, a lovely example of community, but also should not exist
I mean,
because
it is.
someone from above should be, or I don't know who it is exactly, but somebody should be trickling the message down and helping give those people the tools. It shouldn't be that they're just trying to piece it together on their own.
No, I think that you're spot on with that. They shouldn't be. And I think part of what I've done at organizations has been the orchestrator of those things because one of the last organizations I worked with in, I wrote a job description to become the manager enablement specialist. To basically say it's my job to take care of all the managers because we have no one doing it. And as a manager, I'm telling you it's a terrible experience. And I think that is so needed for people because they are trying to figure it together. They are trying to patch it together. And what do they really have to be able to do that? I think when I think about someone coming to my team and she said, it's really important to me that I get a raise. I've been with the organization for 5 years. I came here as an intern. I have a master's degree. She told me what her salary was. I looked at the system. I was like, this is appalling. And I'll see what I can do. I ran it at the flagpole. They came back and they said, listen, it's really important that, you can bring her on the team, but you have to tell her she can't get a raise. She has to come in on the salary she was made. I said, well, I'm looking at her salary. She makes less than my mentee who works in hospitality. There's no reason for this salary number. And it was like, we'll try to bump her up over time. But the agreement I made with her personally as her manager was, listen, if you spend 2 years with me, I will develop you so that you can do whatever you want to do. You can make whatever choice you want to make at the end of that 2 years. And that basically meant, listen, if you want to leave the organization, fine. If you want to stay here and go to another team, if you want to go to a different position and try to apply for something that will give you more money, fine. The value proposition of working for me is I promise to give you enough experiences that you can confidently go into the next phase of your career. And I think that's really, as people leaders, all we can do at this point. To be able to say, and you started off with the value proposition of working is development. And I think that is what managers can bring to anyone on their team is development, even if it's not through like formal channels. Maybe it's introductions, maybe it's exposure, maybe it's a different experience, but I'm going to help you with your development so that you can figure out what comes next because we have passed on, going back to the value proposition. We're no longer in the stay with the company forever place. This is a pit stop in
Yeah.
your career. So let's make this a valuable stop for you and as you move on.
Yeah. The day the pensions dried up, so did the option for me staying forever. If nobody's giving out the gold watches and the long time pensions anymore, that's people aren't going to stay, and that's normal.
Yeah.
I like what you said there about I'm going to coach you, I'm going to introduce you to people. So much of it is really just seeing some of the best managers I had. One of the things that they did really was see the possibilities within the org for me and then just go, I'll email this guy. I'm going to set up a time for the two of you to chat. This
Yeah.
is what I think you should talk about. But it wasn't like, I'm going to teach you how to do this. That wasn't even them training me. It was just them finding the right avenues for me to develop the next thing that I needed to develop. And I think that's hugely powerful when you have a manager that can help you see your career in that way and help you make those connections.
Yeah. And to see it as what can I give you? Like, I was having this conversation with somebody and we were talking about experiences and we're talking about layoffs because she's getting ready to go through a layoff and hasn't been through it in a very long time. So it's still feeling very fresh from her. And I said, one of the things that I have learned over the years, because I call myself a bit of a layoff queen, I've gone through three of them. The way I started looking at layoffs was the door closed at the end of the lesson that I was supposed to learn there. And I can literally pinpoint like a major project, a major thing that I did at every single company that became springboard for the next thing that I did some other place. And so being at a space where now I'm just like, you know what? The way that I look at someone being on a team as a manager is like, what's the defining thing? What's the project? What's the experience? What you're going to give them that's going to propel them forward. And if you can think of it like that, even the greater conversation around the employee value proposition and what they're getting from the organization becomes something that you can manage on your team to say, I know that what I'm going to give you is the springboard to the next phase of your career or the next level of expertise to what you're doing. I'm going to help you move from just a knowledge of something to an expert of something during your time with me. And I think that can be a fair value proposition for a manager without asking too much of them. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable because you see that stat like from last year, like 82% of young people don't want to, they're not even interested in a management position.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't have any desire to go into management. And it's when you think about it, look at what they're seeing. No, of course they don't. Who would want to do that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who wants to be for micromanaged by executives or told that they're doing like to be pulled in 15 different directions? I think how you make it really valuable and interesting to people is you talk about the psychological contract, right? That's going to exist between you and your direct reports. So what is it that you're going to basically put them in charge of? It's not that you're necessarily in charge of other people's happiness, right? Or even their engagement, but you are investing in their career success in a personal way.
Yeah.
That feels like having an impact on somebody's life. That's something that most people's values can align with. So being the person that's going to help them grow, protect their interests, create conditions where they can do their best work. Those are things that most people can go, yeah, I guess I can see myself getting into. You wouldn't be like, that sounds awful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think, and it will lead to things like happiness and engagement, right? But it'll just be a byproduct of this other thing that you're doing. And it's the best thing that you can do for somebody in the workplace, right? It's personal, but it's not like personal in a way that any other relationship in life is. And that's why when we say managers are the reasons people leave organizations, well, it's because it's unlike any other relationship you're going to have in your life.
Every time I hear that saying, it makes me itch. Every single
It does. It's a little annoying
and
because it's no, they don't. They leave for
I
more
would say
money. They
like
leave for a lot of things.
it leads to a lot of things, but also I think it's unfair because a lot of times the manager is the proxy for the organization. So if
Right.
you leave because you can't get a raise, sometimes HR is the reason behind that. And I'm not saying that to shit blame the HR. What I'm saying is that as somebody who has worked in HR, my background is HR, so I'm an HR girly and also operations. I know that like I can't randomly give you a number for your salary, or I'm giving a bucket of money during the performance management cycle that I have to figure out how to distribute, but that's the bucket that I'm given. So if the guidance from the organization says that on average people are getting 3%, I don't have more to give you.
Yeah.
That
That's what it is, what it
is
is,
what it is.
right?
And there's been times where I've said, listen, this number doesn't make sense. I don't need this much of a bonus. You can take some of it and you can give it to my direct report because this is insane. And so I think sometimes people don't recognize that managers operate within parameters. Now, are there some who are not as effective at their job as we would like? Yes. But each manager doesn't have their own kingdom to make decisions in.
No.
They have to operate within the structures of the broader organization. And so if workloads are unreasonable, typically as a manager, that has come from above me
Yeah.
even as a middle
I,
manager, right? Because, and so we never think about the downflow of how this happens. We just think about that person who happens to be the linchpin in the conversation. And we're like, oh, they leave managers. But I think that is something that we started saying so that we're not solving the real issues, the real systemic issues in organizations that actually do cause people to leave.
so I had a team at a previous job, it was about 5 people. And one of the things I said to the folks when they first came in, like if we had like entry level, this is what I'd say to them. I will advocate for your development and I'll provide you with regular feedback. On your side, you need to communicate openly about challenges and take ownership of your growth. I can't do that for you.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to make you. So that's up to you. You figure it out. I am willing to advocate for you to do anything that you want to do inside this organization as long as it makes sense.
Yeah.
And I will support your career goals within the constraints of what this organization can do for you. Understand that it may be that it just can't do anything else for you. That's the way it is. Maybe it's time for you to move on once you reach that point. And you need to understand that I cannot control. I'm just a manager here. I don't own the place. I don't have a stake in, I don't have stock. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I'm not a shareholder. At the end of the day, the system that we live in is a shareholder driven system. If it's a large corporation, if you're looking at a small company, it's down to the CEO or the owner, the founder. That's about all you get.
Yeah.
So you got to understand that I cannot control all organizational decisions that affect me, never mind you. Because of the problem was the current setup leaves both people guessing about what they should do or like how they should proceed. And then it breeds resentment because the resentment goes up the chain. It's like, you remember that old saying, gripes go up, not down?
Yeah.
So does resentment.
Yeah.
It's because unstated expectations will inevitably clash with the reality of the workplace.
No, I
That's
love
just
that you
how it
said
is.
that because I think one of the things that I always tell people is like, it's not my job to pay I Spy Private Eye. If you have a need,
Yes.
you got to tell me what it is, but I don't have a magic 8 ball. There's too many of y'all for me trying to figure it out. Now I'm going to create the avenues for you to tell me those things. We're going to have the conversations. I'm going to ask you, but if you don't tell me, it's not my job to have to figure it out. And when I'm coaching managers, I tell them the same thing. It is not your job to play I Spy Private Eye. Your job is to do exactly what you said, is to create the avenues for people to be successful and to open the conversation for it to be had. And here's how you can have that conversation. But also, if you don't know, I don't know. If you don't know what you want to do with your career, I don't know what you want to do with your career. I'll have plenty of conversations to help you figure that out, but I can't wave a magic wand and make that happen. And I think on the other side of that, in advocating for people leaders, I always say you can't expect them to have what the organization doesn't have. I mean, if you don't have career pathing in your organization, don't expect a manager to then be like, here's how we career path. You haven't set that up for them. You haven't created a structure. Like, we have to be fair about this. So I do think that there's this like in the middle where managers are just catching it from both sides. And I can see why people are like, no, thank you to the role.
Absolutely. I think it sounds like a gardening analogy where it's like you gave me a bunch of seeds, but then you're like, what? There's no water here.
There's no water. The
Dude.
ground is dry. But grow something beautiful. Thank you. She's a
Thanks.
really good analogy. It's I'm going to grow a garden, but you're like, there's no fertilizer, there's no
There's no water.
water,
I'm not even going to give you a shovel.
but here's a little planter for you. Go, and then why haven't you grown the thing? And you're like, I had no resources. But and I think
And then they get mad at you. They're like, why didn't you grow your fingernails out and claw at it?
why did
You know? It's like, you didn't even suggest that.
And I think that's going down the pathway of a lot of it is structural. A lot of the behaviors that we see in people leaders is a direct result of the environment that they exist in. I was at a conference one day, there was a senior leader on stage, and he was talking about like the performance of the people leaders in the organization. And again, it was another one of those situations that made me itch because I was like, listen, managers, and I hate saying good or bad managers because I think that's an unfair dichotomy, but like managers who are ineffective, the ones that people are always like screaming about, don't just appear in an organization or happen. They are there because they were hired, they were underdeveloped, and they were allowed to remain. And they were also compensated to not be a good manager. And I think that's one of the conversation points that doesn't ever really come up a lot, which is a lot of times organizations will recognize, reward, promote the wrong behaviors or something that is not the leadership that they want, and then say, we hope people are also good leaders. And so I'm wondering, like, do we think that in the systems level that we actually reward the wrong behaviors, but then expect managers to manage as if we're not rewarding them to do something else?
Like one of the biggest problems we have is oftentimes managerial pathways are the pathway up or forward, but we just give them to the best performers. Just because you performed well at this role as an IC, that doesn't mean that you know how anything about leadership or management. Like you don't, you may not actually be the personality type that's going to succeed for that. And if we want to advance you or pay you more or keep you engaged and bring you up through the ladder in the organization and build your influence, maybe there's got to be another way to do that. Because I know you've seen this before is you had somebody that was a good performer. They wanted something more. They wanted more money. They wanted to take on more responsibility. They wanted a greater say within the organization or whatever. And so that we gave it to them. And then the fact was that person did not have the right mindset, the right personality, quite frankly, to be a manager of the group that you put them in charge of. And it clashed immediately. And it just set them up for failure. And it's interesting because it's probably the most damaging contradiction that we have in modern business. We promote based on individual achievement, but then we expect people to help develop others.
Yeah.
And that's now their measurement of success. How does somebody who's been really in a lot of cases, like if you look at like my job, right? If I'm really focused on myself all the time, how does that teach me how to show others the way?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't. We can't just reward people for hitting numbers regardless of method, but then mandate that they go and create psychologically safe environments. That doesn't make any sense.
I think, like, for me, it's not even the IC part of it. The challenge that persists for me is I was in a session with managers, and one of them said, listen, the client comes first. Whatever the client needs, we're going to do. And if I have to run my team into the ground to do it, then so be it. And I'm always really grateful when managers are honest with me about that, when they're honest with me about their motivators and why they're doing what they're doing, because I feel like it helps us understand. And I didn't judge or blame him because that's the reality of how we run our businesses, right? Like we want to make that profit. We want that customer to be happy. We might say our people come first, but we also really believe that profits come first. And so if I'm talking to a manager whose own stability and security comes from the outcome, there is absolutely no structural measure of them as a people leader, whether they're good or bad. It's not a far leap that their behavior is going to align to what they are compensated and punished for. And it's absolutely not people leadership. And I think that's the part that has always been so interesting to me about saying we want one thing, but then compensating, rewarding for something else, and then
Right.
crossing our fingers and hoping that you just happen to magically turn into a wonderful people leader on the side without actually structurally supporting the thing that we said that we wanted.
And it's interesting because your background's in HR,
Yep.
and I'm not surprised that you understand this. Because because most of the HR people I talk to, they get this.
Yeah.
But the people who drive a lot of the decision making within their organizations, whether it's CEOs or other executives, other people around the leadership team, they don't necessarily get it. Right. So I think most of us get that you can't incentivize cost cutting and efficiency, but then complain when somebody doesn't find time for meaningful coaching conversations. Like that doesn't like
It's insane.
and so and the promotion criteria haven't changed. And I think okay, if the manager's job description is fundamentally shifting towards emotional intelligence, coaching, culture building, right? This is like what we hope a lot of the managers, or at least that's what it seems, are gonna do. But then again, like I said, the promotion criteria is the same. So they were elevated because of what they did on an individual level. It's like, I don't know, you're training a sprinter, but then you're like, now I would like you to teach swimming. And it's what? I just think we've got to get to the point where we align the reward systems with leadership expectations.
How
Like,
hard is that? It's not that difficult of a concept to grasp. It makes me want to shake people when I'm literally like, none of your reward systems actually align to the outcome that you want to have. None of them. Because at the end of the day, and I say this again, as from my experience as a people leader, none of the managers above me ever asked me about like, how's your team doing? There's maybe like one or two. But if I didn't bring it into the conversation because I knew to do, it's not a part of the conversation. When we're having these performance cascade conversations, there's no separate conversation for people leaders. It's the same conversation as if they were an individual contributor, which is why they continue to behave like they were an individual contributor.
yeah.
There's no separate manager system for that. And so it's always so interesting to me that we then say, we have managers that are doing the wrong thing, because why wouldn't they? If organizationally we are winning at all costs and we see it, right? Well,
The number one thing that gets translated down is win at all costs. No matter what the manager does, that's all they're going to feel. And when you give them time and space to consume your workplace and digest it,
yeah,
it doesn't take that long to figure out what's important to folks.
it really does not. And so I think the other part of that then for me becomes, are we asking managers to do the emotional work that the rest of the organization is actually not doing? Are we asking them to be these empathetic, almost parental like figures in an organization where everything else is actually not that way? When we think about culture, when we think about how it feels to work someplace, we put that squarely almost on managers. Is that fair? If that's an expectation that we have of them, are we even supporting them in that ask?
I'm glad you used the analogy of parents, right? Because it's a little bit like how you've got people in leadership in this country who think people need to have more babies but don't want to give them daycare. You know what I mean? It's like the same thing. It's yes, but it's unsustainable. You changed management really from a coordination function into this like therapeutic one
Yeah,
where they're carrying all this emotional weight. And they got to be coaches and counselors and career advisors and conflict mediators and guardians of the culture.
yeah, yes, yes.
But
That's
then
what
they've
we're
not been,
asking.
but you didn't train them in any of those areas.
No.
So I don't know why you'd think that it would happen, right?
I think, you know what, I love that you said that because I think that's right. Going back even who we promote, I think what I'm seeing is that we promote people who are not naturally, characteristically set up for the ask of the new role. Whenever we talk about leaders, right, and we love to use assessments, and we always use a lot of DISC was one when its heyday, we were all doing DISC assessments. And if you look to see like the majority of senior leaders that or they fell in the DISC profile, where do they all fall?
I hate those things.
They're all high Bs.
I'm
So if you think about like how DISC is laid out, there's like a task focus on one side and a people focus on the other side.
right.
And then there's like a pacing, like the fast pace at the top, a slow pace at the bottom, and the D's are basically in that upper right quadrant. But those are task-oriented people. And I think what I'm
Mhm.
seeing, especially in our continued push toward letting technology take over the world, is that I always say that like when I walk into an organization, I can see people that are over-indexed in task or they're over indexed in technology, meaning they don't want to interact with a human. They want to interact with the Slack channel. They want to interact with the wiki. They don't want to talk to a person. And so we are consistently creating this leadership of people who don't actually like to people. And being a people leader, I think one of the fundamental aspects of it is that you do have to like to people. You do have to find it at least mildly enjoyable because peopling is or should be the whole job. And I think it's not necessarily that we are promoting individual contributors who are more self-centered or working on themselves, as much as I think that we are promoting people into a job that they don't have a natural affinity for because they don't like to people. They like to task. I want to do the work.
Yeah.
I want to build the widget, but I don't want to people. And being a good people leader requires some level of affinity for human beings and peopling.
There's another challenge too, right? So like the task of being a manager right now is difficult.
Yeah.
If you're going to be a therapeutic function at a time when people are experiencing what they're experiencing when they walk out of the door of the office, that's already wild, right?
Yeah.
So we got to consider what we're really asking. It's navigate remote work dynamics that you've never managed before and that none of us have created a successful template for around here. I'm sorry, you're just going to have to figure that out. Address these generational differences that you don't understand that are like embedded in everybody's minds, that like Gen Z's this, boomers are that, millennials are that.
Yeah.
You know, manage through organizational change that you weren't consulted on. Support employee mental health, even though I know you don't have a clinical background in any way. Create belonging for diverse teams. Manage your own stress and get performance targets done. What are you talking about? Like how?
The role is a lot. The role is a lot.
And then
When you say it like that, it is like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
this is ridiculous. And then on top of that, oh, don't worry, we've got tools. We've got this performance management system that we first bought in 2005 and a leadership development program that's offered through Coursera. So there you go. That should be enough for you to just hit the ground running.
Go be great. Go be great.
Yeah, go iterate and innovate. What are you talking about, man?
I love this. I love this so much. I think that what we are coming to is that in the midst of all of this, we talk about the employee value proposition. I think that's where we started. But I think at the end of this, I think this conversation is really about what is the value proposition for me as a manager?
Yeah.
What is it that's going to help me think through what it's like, the challenges that I come to and why do people want to do it? And I think even with all the layoffs, I do think that we're going to find our way back to needing people leaders. I
Oh, yeah. I think
love,
this will be one of the most important functions in 5 years.
oh, I think so. Because let me tell you something. I love the GPTs, right? And all the AIs of it all. And I have a couple, like one of my good friends created one called Tough Love, and it gives you like a kick in the pants when you need it. But
Mm,
then like sometimes I use my other one. It's always, oh, Kamaria, it's okay. But neither one of them has the ability to flex and be like, girl, get your life together. And then say, but also you might need a hug. And I think that ability to be situationally appropriate and to flex, like maybe the technology will continue to get better, but I think as a people leader, making subjective decisions is what we do.
yeah.
And sometimes there's no pattern to draw from, as AI likes to use.
Use your gut.
Yeah.
But- And people hate that. People hate that. Everybody wants data-driven decision making. But I don't know about you. Have you ever just been given a data set and gone, what does that even mean?
No.
Or I don't know. You plug it in and you can plug it. Go ahead, plug it into GPT. See what it says. It'll be like, we'll say something like, clear conclusions are hard to derive from this. But what it's saying is, I don't know.
I don't know. It
You're going
doesn't
to have
know.
to feel it. But it can't feel it. And yeah, and we're saying that this is maybe one of the most important jobs in 5 years. And I keep coming back to that conclusion because I often think I've been replaying my whole career in my head. I'm actually thankful to be as old as I am.
Yeah.
Which is rare because I experienced the things that I experienced. And when I hear about what's happening with entry level jobs, what the new work experiences, I think it's going to be difficult for that younger group to not only see their path forward, but find the resources and things that they need outside of AI.
Yeah.
AI will do a lot, but there's places where it has limitations. We know that. And I think ultimately connecting with human beings and being able to relay like a real human experience is one of the ways that we'll always fall short. And some of the key moments in my career were like somebody saying, I know you feel that way. I've actually
Yeah.
been there. I had this happen, and they told me a story about their career and how it's played out and what they learned from it. It didn't necessarily change what I was thinking, but it made me feel something different about what was going on. It made me look at it in a different way
Yeah.
that maybe calmed me down, made me more rational, or made me think about it in a way that was outside of how I was initially reacting to it.
Yeah.
And so I think that like the role will continue to be important. It's just like we're going through a little phase right now where it's like, oh, everybody will just listen to the AI. That's not necessarily good. And like we're seeing that play out in real time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it is going to continue to be one of the most important roles. As I'm reflecting myself about what managers have done for me that AI couldn't do, I go back to managers gave me a chance. AI can't say, I'm going to grant you permission to go do this project. One of my favorite managers brought me into an executive room. She said, listen, I'm not going to speak for your work. If you're doing it, you're coming in here and you're going to
Yeah.
tell the people about it. And that's how I developed executive presence. It wasn't like go take a class in executive presence. I had a manager who said, girl, that's wonderful. Come on down here. Let's go talk to the C-suite about it. And when I literally mid sentence forgot what I was talking about, she jumped in and was like, yes, and da 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 da. I'll never forget the walk back. And she's what happened. I was like, I have no idea. But she did that for me. She gave me the net to go jump out there and was like, but listen, if you fall, I got you. And that shaped how I see myself as a people leader as well. I think of another people leader who learned me enough to know that if you just give me something, I'm going to run away with it and I'll come back with something great, but don't bother me, don't micromanage me. And she let me do that. She recognized what I wanted to do for myself and she gave me a playground. And I think that is a beautiful thing that the AI will not give you is somebody to say, I believe you. And I think as humans, we still need that from other humans. I love my AIs, but I can tell when it's working from an algorithm and it annoys my spirit. And so then I just stop talking to it because I already know what it's going to say. And I think the other thing that I discovered the other day was that AI is also not going to give you context. So what you said about like that person who's going to give you from their experience, this is why this is right or wrong. Because you're going to have this broad amount of information that you get from AI, but it's going to take somebody else saying, I know what it told you to do, but let me give you the nuance that it's missing. And I can tell you from experience why that is or is not the case. So I do agree that I think managers are going to continue to be critically important, but we have to support them better than we are today.
I think you gotta start redesigning the whole EVP. It's got to be sustainable rather than aspirational. So don't ask them to compensate for systemic shortcomings just through like by rewarding overwork or personal heroics.
Yes.
Like you do that for very long. And if you try, you're going to burn yourself out.
I remember clearly one of my direct reports said to me, Kamaria, I'm worried about you. And like literally, my direct report was like, girl, I can see the crashing. And it was because I was trying to personally hero my way through. I was leading a global team. I was up in the morning on calls at 6:30. I was on calls at 8 and everywhere in between. And it was physically impossible to do all the things that we say a good people leader should do without burning ourselves out, without support from the organization. And I think that's why managers are struggling now. And I think we do have to think about not only the broader value proposition of the organization and of work in general, but what is the value proposition of being a people leader at this point?
That and then like we talked about the training piece. And it's like, why is this something that you just have to learn through experience? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Professionalize it. You've done this with every other discipline. If you hire a junior engineer and then they start wanting to advance, you're like, get this certification. Here's these ongoing development programs. Here's support systems to help you be a better engineer. That's something that like exists, but we just promote people and hope for the best. That can't go on for much longer, I don't
No.
think. If we're going to get the most out of people, we're going to have to get the most out of managers. And got to professionalize this.
I love it. I love that so much. This has been an amazing conversation. I'm so glad we were able to have it. David, thank you for joining us. Again, you all, if you did not get the first part of this podcast, please do go over to People Managing People. Start there. We can have a broader conversation about the employee value proposition, what work is to people today. Obviously, we wanted to bring the side over here to hone down on managers. And then if they want to learn more about you, David, and People Managing People, where can they do that?
We're all over most social platforms, LinkedIn especially, though. I post on there constantly. David Rice, it's pretty easy. And then, yeah, check out peoplemanagingpeople.com. I have a newsletter that sends twice a week. We share all of our upcoming events. We do a lot of cool panel discussions, ask the expert sessions. We're looking to get into more workshops. So lots of cool stuff coming up, lots of cool writing. If you're looking for like resources, you need a 30, 60, 90 template, we've got you covered. We've got all kinds of stuff like that. And yeah, of course, the People Managing People podcast. So
Definitely go check out all the things that People Managing People has in store. I'm always excited to partner with other people that are philosophically aligned and really share a passion for people leaders. And then also, everything we talked about, the need to structurally improve people leadership is what we do. My company, Netic, does, and we have a flagship program that we call Manager Momentum Operating System, where we help organizations to not only develop their people leaders, but also think about some of the structural things that might be keeping them from performing at their best and to reduce the need for them to try to hero their way through the role. So if that's something that's of interest to your organization, there'll be a link in the show notes, and you can also check that out at managermomentum.com.
So, on behalf of David and myself, thank you for listening to Manage to Manager. Please take care of yourself and each other until we meet again.